Hi, this is the Social Gelo with Angelo show. My name's Angelo. I'm a social scientist, surfer, martial artist, and a whole lot of other things. Coming to you live from Kasai City, Japan, the Social Gelo with Angelo show.
What's up, and welcome to Social Gelo with Angelo, conversations with a back fist. I'm supposed to say that at the beginning of everything, but I said this before, this is why I'm not going to be a big podcaster, because I suck at marketing, taglines. Oh, I should probably say now, if you like what you've heard so far, smash that like button and hit subscribe. I've been saying that at the end of an hour podcast. I should say at the beginning, if you heard my show before. If not, then give it some time. Maybe you'll hate this and you shouldn't. And you can always unlike. I'm being joined today by, oh boy, titles. We're just gonna say Ron Esteller. Okay, Ron Esteller. He's a Kajukenbo practitioner and instructor coming out of the Bay Area. What's the name of your school again, man?
Esteller Martial Arts.
Oh, that's easy to remember.
Yeah,
Esteller Martial Arts. And the reason he's joining me is because if you've been following this podcast, I recently did a podcast with Mitch Powell, and he is the KSDI historian. This is not the Kajukenbo podcast. This is the Social Gelo with Angelo podcast. I can't emphasize that enough because when I come at stuff, I come at it. Why does it say social? It's actually stands for social psychology, not socialists. For all those people, fucking socialists. No, it's social psychology. So I am really interested in cultures, subcultures. I feel that martial arts is a subculture, but then it's even crazier when you look at the styles. You can break that down into subcultures of subcultures with different traditions. So it got mentioned real quick. And I was corrected earlier, and I'm not going to mess this up. Danzan-Ryu, or Danzan-Ryu, depending how you want to pronounce it. Danzan-Ryu Jiujitsu is the Ju in Kajukenbo. It stands for it's the ground element, the grappling element. A little bit of background. It came from the Kodokan Institute, and the Kodokan Institute is the Judo Institute that was founded in 1882 by Kano Jigoro, the founder of Judo. This is the same Kodokan, as I mentioned in that podcast. If you hear me repeating yourself, fine. If you're a BJJ guy listening, though, this is kind of interesting for you because this is the same place that Maeda came from, right? Mitsuyo Maeda was one of Kano Jigoro's students. He was one of his top groundwork experts. So he went around the world. He left Japan in 1904, started going around the world doing judo demonstrations, accepting challenges from wrestlers, boxers, and savate fighters. This is interesting because it was actually kind of a catch wrestling group that he was working with. So there's a really cool podcast. If you go look at Stephen Kesting's Strenuous Life podcast, the history of catch wrestling that eventually turned into pro wrestling, and this idea of a catch and a shoot being a real fight, a catch being a fixed match. So I'm not going to go there because that's a different set of drama, but I will say that that's what Maeda was working with. And that's where he ended up in Brazil. And that's how he ended up meeting Carlos Gracie. And that's how we end up with the whole BJJ thing. So before we start this conversation about grappling and jiu-jitsu, I have these questions because now I do I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since I was 25. And I just always moved around and could care less about my rank. So I'm not a very high level rank in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I don't want to mention too much where I train, but I will say, if you're a nerd, I'll be saying where I've been training without saying it. It is a school that comes from Carlos Gracie. But that's as far as I'm going to say. If you're smart enough, you know where I'm going. If not, it's all good. That's where I'm coming at it. So, what is the title of this podcast, title of this YouTube video? What is Danzan-Ryu Jujitsu?
Okay. I'm going to preface this with saying that there are infinitely more knowledgeable people about Danzan-Ryu than me. I just happened to contact you right almost as soon as that podcast came out and go, hey, well, I've been playing with the Danzan-Ryu people since 1991. I've had a Danzan-Ryu program at my dojo since at least 2000. So I have this much knowledge of a great system because to me, it's Kajukenbo. And I got to bring it back to that. And I say that because Okazaki trained in a lot of different things. He did Shorin-ryu karate. He trained with the Lua guys. You know, he did boxing. Hey, wait a minute, does that sound familiar? You know, so, you know, because Frank Ordonez and Joe Hulk all were part of that, a lot of that came through. The ideals came through. The ideals filtered through the Kaju. So I'm just going to say that for now. So as in, what is Danzan-Ryu Jujitsu? Well, you know, like I said, it's a mix of this, a mix of that. Sounds familiar, but it's, you know, it was founded in 1925, you know, and when Okazaki came in 1906 to Hawaii, you know, he was, you know, that's when he immigrated in. And then just from there, it just kind of, you know, just went. Wally J came out of that. Willie Cahill. Let me see who else. Joe Hulk, obviously, Wally J, Saragosa, Cahill, Sid Kugaroff. So there are a whole lot of different organizations that have spread out. Just like Kajukenbo has all these organizations, so does Danzan-Ryu. The organization that was taught at my school was Pacific Jiu-Jitsu Alliance, and that basically was Bob McKeon through the Montero lineage. So that's just a small history there.
Okay. And so, all right. So looking at that, and then for anybody who's coming from a BJJ background, just mentioning Wally J, he's really big in judo, in the judo background. And then the other crazy thing about the Kodokan, and I think this is really interesting, right? When was judo? Because judo wasn't in the Olympics till 1964. Okay, that's something that a lot of people act like judo is, you know, has been in the Olympics forever. It wasn't in the Olympics till 1964, and then it wasn't really established till 1882, as the Kodokan was established, right? And then what we call judo, what Americans call judo, the Kodokan had all kinds of tatewaza, newaza, a bunch of styles of grappling to make things more confusing. So Americans and outsiders see judo as this unified grappling art, but it wasn't that. It was all your jujitsus. It was your aiki jujitsus, all those styles of Japanese jiu-jitsu that include grappling. Sometimes it was aikido. It was based from the older scripts on how to disarm someone, or it might be based more on the sports side. So they all got together and said, you know what? Instead of having all these separate branches, let's just make it all judo. It's going to be called the Kodokan. And we'll continue to practice the different types of grappling, right? And this is really important to distinguish, because then because of that, people will come to America, people will come to Japan and start studying judo or newaza, or even more complicated Japanese jiu-jitsu as compared to the Brazilian jiu-jitsu. They look the same, but all the names are in Japanese with Japanese traditions behind it. So with all that in mind, you actually trained with people that did Danzan-Ryu Jiujitsu. I said that right? Hopefully.
Yes.
What would a typical class look like? Instead of going into what is Danzan-Ryu Jujitsu or what is Kajukenbo, which I don't want to talk about.
Well,
what's it look
all
like?
All the arts are made up on these boards, and the boards have like maybe anywhere from 20 to 25, 30 techniques each on the boards. Okay. Each board is specified. Yawara, a lot of the wrist escapes and all the basic. That's the very first board. That's the first thing everybody learns. Easy stuff. It was so easy that, I mean, I probably was teaching my Safe Kids program for a number of years before I realized that the first four things in my Safe Kids program were the first four things on the Yawara board. You know, outside wrist grab, inside wrist, double hand. So very simple escaping. Next board up is the nage. So that's all the throws. You know, that's all the basic stuff. And then they went through all the other different arts. A lot of it was standing to the throw. The throw was the big thing. Hit them with the ground, right? The throw was the big thing. Then you land, and then you're not submitting. That's what I love about these guys. They're not submitting anything. They're breaking something. something's getting broken either on the way down or once you get there, something's getting broken. And that's what I loved about this art. And these guys, the way that they do it, the people that I've been associated with, they're hard. They throw hard, they hit hard. Not many of them left, just like us old Kaiju guys. Not many of us left because, you know, everything's hard. I'm walking with my walker now.
So if, just to make it clear, let's say pretend that someone walks into a Danzan-Ryu Jiujitsu school, dojo. I don't know if they call them dojos. They walk in, what would they be doing? Because here's an example. I have my first day of BJJ. I walk in. Here's what I'm doing. I line up. They're going to show me one self-defense technique for maybe an MMA street setting, kind of loosely. And then I'm going to spend the next hour, I'll probably do that for like 5 minutes, and then I'll spend the next 45 minutes working one technique based on the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu rules, gi, and on my first day, they're going to show me grab the center, how to get out of closed guard. They're going to show me closed guard and how to get out of closed guard. And I'll spend my day doing that, you know, escaping closed guard. Maybe they'll show me a variation on that escape. Maybe, doubtful, they may show me one submission from closed guard. Probably not. Probably won't. That won't happen until later. But on the first day, I'll probably just be learning how to escape closed guard. And then they'll make me spar. And then for sparring, we worked closed guard that day, so they're going to make us focus in closed guard. I'm not allowed to free spar if I'm at some other, you know, not naming any names of where I train, but if I walked in and I have a white belt and I don't know what I'm doing, I'm not allowed to free spar anybody. I'm going to be in closed guard, and then some guy who's been doing it for a while is going to smash because they want to sign me up.
Yeah.
So me being smashed by this guy, like I'm gonna be like, okay, cool, I can do this now. I understand it, and I think I get the technique. And then they're gonna have this guy just completely mess me up. Like I'm gonna try to get out of closed guard, and he's not gonna let me out of closed guard. The technique that they showed me is not gonna work against this guy. And then the other way around, when I'm sitting in closed guard, he's gonna be like, whoop, and I'm gonna be like, whoa, where'd the guy go? And that's what it looks like on my first day. So what would the first day look for a Danzan-Ryu class?
Learning how to fall, because you're going to need that skill. Rolling, falling, you know, they'll be running and doing forward rolls, back rolls, side falls, you know, later on stemmies, you know, just everything is going to the ground and it's going down hard. So you really do have to know how to fall. So that's very important, especially at the beginning, because that's where people get hurt, right? So rolling and knowing and just learning how to fall, and then as the warm-ups, and then probably working on X amount of technique. Now, Chris never stayed in line. He would do some of this, some of that, some of this, but you know, to really learn those boards, just go down those techniques and work each one of those arts. And I'm not saying everybody teaches like that, but all the different schools within the association that I'm associated with seems to teach that way. So that would be my best guess.
All right. And the reason I say all this, and here's where I'm going to be maybe stepping on some toes. Right? When we go to Kajukenbo, people always say, the Jew is for Jiu-Jitsu. The Jew is for, it used to be, the Jew is for Judo. No one ever said Jiu-Jitsu. Oh, I'm just going to flat out, I'm going to say it and I'll get in trouble for this later. And maybe some of you did use Jiu-Jitsu, and if you did, good for you. Everybody I talked to, and this was around this was about 20 years back. So we're in 2020, early 2000s. Early 2000s, when I first started doing Kajukenbo, people were like, the Jew is for Judo. And a few years in, the UFC started getting big, and suddenly the Jew turned into Jiu-Jitsu. So, like, and that's what they say. But by the time I walked into my first Jiu-Jitsu class, it looked nothing like
what you did.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
looked nothing like what I was taught.
Yeah, they're two completely different animals. I mean, there's no doubt there. You know, they may have been born from the same cow, but they're definitely different. And I'm going to say it again. The jujitsu that I know from what I've seen, and the jujitsu from what I was brought up with training Kajukenbo, is in essence the same. I see a lot of the arts in the Danzan-Ryu. I go, oh, that's our grab art 15. Now I see where that came from. You know, there's a lot of arts that intermix. I go, now I know where that came from. You know, just that being said, remember Joe Hulk was Kodokan, right? So he was judo and jujitsu. And Frank Ordonez was from that same group, and he definitely was jujitsu. So yes, the Jew and Kajukenbo, to me, has always seen more jujitsu than judo. In any school from I've ever seen, there's not much judo and a lot of jujitsu. So I think maybe it's kind of condensed through the years, because more people are, I mean, how many Kajukenbo schools do you know that actually do judo and compete in judo? That's how many I know. You know, I've been around a minute, right? You know, but that being
I
said,
didn't want to say it. I'll let you say it. You've been doing this longer.
I just said it.
So yeah.
Why I'm here for that reason, right? Because I have a little bit of time and knowledge, a little bit, you know. At least I can fill some time here until you get somebody really to talk about this, you know.
And the reason I'm saying this again is because and you know what, in defense to Kajukenbo, I do know that right now I personally know Kajukenbo practitioners that compete in no-gi and in gi tournaments. Now absolutely. I do know that, and I know but I also know that to do that, they cross-trained. So they went to BJJ places, they learned the rules, they figured it out.
Yep.
And then they decided to enter these tournaments in whatever division they decided to, and they started competing, and they placed and everything. But again, from just to be I love Kajukenbo. I'm going to say this, and I love Kajukenbo, and I'm going to say this anyway. Kajukenbo tends to look, and I just made a video about this, and probably gonna come out. It's probably gonna come out before this. So if you've been following my YouTube channel, I already said this on my YouTube video, because someone asked me. I had a Kajukenbo guy ask me, can you make a grappling fundamentals, like a beginner? What should a beginner know if they had to fight a jiu-jitsu guy? What should a beginner work on to be able to figure out what they're thinking, what they're doing? And my saying was, hey, look, Kajukenbo guys look at fighting from standing to the ground. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys look at it the exact opposite and train it that way. So they look at it from the ground, then up. And this is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's different from Judo. Judo will start from the standing. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys work from the ground up. And because of that, if the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy doesn't cross-train enough, that stand-up portion is going to be where he's going to lose. And then we flip that, and if that Kajukenbo guy didn't work down here enough, this is where the Kajukenbo guy is going to have some problems. If you end up adjusting it like on the ground, your weapons have been, all your arms are tied up now, your legs are tied up now, and now you have to figure out what to do. So yeah, I don't know where I was going that, but I was going somewhere with that.
How would a Kaju guy fight a jiu-jitsu guy if that happened? Different on the mat than in the street, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, fish hooking and gouging somebody's eyes, well, you know, yes, that can work, but I know a lot of jiu-jitsu guys that would just piss them off. And they're gonna, and you're going to sleep and get broken, you know. So it, you know, like everything, it depends on the person. You know, that person may be able to make that fish hook or that eye hook work, you know, at least enough to get them off of you and then start banging them, because they are not used to getting hit. for the
Yes.
most part,
Yes.
unless they're cross training in Muay Thai and doing the MMA thing, they're not used to getting hit. Their atemi, striking arts, is not very good. Or I'm going to say not very good, is not their priority.
Well,
Right.
I'll say it. I train with them. It's not very good. Okay, like I'm gonna just flat out say it. I'm talking to a BJ. So a friend of mine was like, I really want to do martial arts. I want to do Kajukenbo with you. I'm like, I'm too far. He's like, but I don't want to get hurt. And I'm like, all right. When we're in Japan, everything in Japan is full contact. It's really hard to find like a nice family place. Everywhere is like either, hey, in Japan, either you're gonna be a professional or you're gonna quit. And that's how they treat people. So
Yeah.
I did recommend this place that I train at. I'm like, okay, this is more of a family jiu-jitsu place. I think he'll do great there. But even he told me now that he's there and he's got a purple belt, he's like, this stand-up is shit. Like, I don't know how to punch. I already have a purple belt, but I have no idea how to punch properly. I have no idea how to kick. I would not feel confident if I fought someone who knew these two things. I know once I close the distance, clinch him, and get him on the ground, I know I'm confident I'll win. But before that, to close that distance, he's like, I'm not confident. He still wants to come. He's like, I just want you to show me some basics, at least in boxing, because they don't cover that. They do not. They don't cover it. Like I have a, like I said, I'm gonna fucking say it. My instructor can't kick. So I always think it's funny when he's sitting there talking about, okay, the guy's gonna kick you like that, and you're gonna catch this roundhouse kick like this, and I'm like, that's gonna get your wrist broken. That's what that's gonna do. You're not gonna catch a roundhouse kick here. That's called a broken rib. that's called you broke your ribs, and then the guy finished you off with a jab straight, and you hit the ground. So there's a lot of like fantasy going on, in the self-defense area. There's no fantasy going on once they're on the ground, but there is. Just like there's when we flipped it to the other way around, when some people are teaching them grappling, they don't know what they're talking about. And they're like, well, you're going to grab the little pinky here and you're going to bend it back here. And that's going to end the fight because he's going to be in so much pain. He's going to tap. And you're like, it's the same. The jiu-jitsu, that guy is doing the same mistake, just the other way around. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, that's what's different about the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as opposed to Danzan-Ryu. A lot of the Danzan-Ryu has been associated with the Kempo arts as well. I mean, that goes back to Hawaii. So it's Kempo Jiu-Jitsu, with Sig Kugarov and that group over there, the Kilahana group, they are strikers. The guys that train with me, and because Professor Chris Nicholas is the one who teaches at my school. And we like to say a lot, you got a little peanut butter in my chocolate and I got a little chocolate in his peanut butter. And, he credits me with a lot of his striking, getting better. And I credit him with a lot of my jiu-jitsu getting better. I modified a lot of my Kajukenbo to do it the proper way. Because, we were getting 3 generations down, some cases 4 generations down, right? From where the original source was. So now I'm doing it and I'm doing it with them and I'm saying, oh, that's how that's supposed to work, and it works much better. That my throws have gotten much better. All my locks are much better because of the association with Danzan-Ryu. And I tell any of your Kajukenbo people out there, you got to go to the source. But now everybody's doing BJJ because that's what everybody wants to do. We're competitors. We like to get out there and bang. Well, there's no banging in Danzan-Ryu other than getting slammed on the ground, 3 times a week or whatever, right? So that's why I think Kajukenbo, a lot of it has gravitated toward Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as opposed to some of the other stand-up styles of Jiu-Jitsu.
And then are the Danzan-Ryu guys, are those guys competing in Judo? Because it sounds like Danzan-Ryu's got a stronger root in Judo than what we have going on.
There are some that do.
Okay.
There are some that, and I'm pretty sure there are some that will go out and do other stuff. Now, this association, they have what they call sport jiu-jitsu, which I love. My next tournament, I'm going to do it too. I call it MMA light. You can strike and get points like point fighting. You get points for takedowns down to the ground. You get points for a submission, but you only got 30 seconds down there. So you got to work fast,
so
right?
It's judo rules. It's judo rules.
Yeah, but you can strike.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's fun. I like the heck out of that division. So that's more the way the Danzan-Ryu guys seem to compete when they go to tournaments, but they don't really do tournaments all that much, at least not the groups that I know.
Okay. But still, I think you mentioned a really good point that the Danzan-Ryu guys do compete. Like their system, they have enough of the tatewaza, they have enough of the stand-up grappling that they actually do compete cross-trained in the judo tournaments. Whereas for the Kajukenbo guys, I mean, there's some Kajukenbo guys come from a judo background, so that's why I know one of the guys I work with, they do work with judo guys, so they do judo tournaments too.
That being said, the big one right there would be Willie Cahill. I mean, Willie Cahill is huge in the, well, guess where he came from? He came from Okazaki, right? So he made it translate out to the sport part of it and was extremely successful. Now, I mean, it's a great style because a lot like our Kajukenbo, it deals with a lot of different ranges as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like, and this is, and again, when I talk about BJJ, for anybody listening, if you're still listening and you're not so pissed off about what I said about BJJ earlier, like, what comes to BJJ, so what I wanted to mention was the BJJ guys, not all of them. The one I work at is that way. Now, when I read about BJJ, the whole reason I decided to start cross-training in BJJ was when I read the story, it sounded like the Kajukenbo story. They had this guy, when I read about Kajukenbo, I heard about Danzan-Ryu Jujitsu, I heard about the Kodokan, and that's how the grappling came into Kajukenbo when I read about it. This is after I joined Kajukenbo a long time ago. But then when I read about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I heard a very similar story about this guy who Maeda, who came and he took on any challengers and he was fighting guys that came from boxing. Right? Sound familiar, right? And then like they talked about the ranges, how Rickson Gracie brought in the ranges of combat between having good stand up for when you're in the standing position, when they're mid-range attacks, you have more elbows, and then when you're up close is when the grappling starts, right? So when I saw that, I'm like, okay, this sounds very similar to what Kajukenbo does, just with a different focus. But then when I got there, I found something that had nothing to do with that. So no offense to them, had very little to do with that and a lot to do with sport jiu-jitsu. So now with the relationship between Danzan-Ryu and Kajukenbo, is there any more things you know about that? Like,
well, yeah, a little bit. I mean, this is an interesting story that I got from Liebert O'Sullivan. And he was, when I met him, it was at the gathering in Sacramento, Bruce Jutnick's gathering. I've gone to it for 30 years. It's just a big seminar once a year. And at that time, he was like the oldest living practitioner of Danzan-Ryu Jujitsu. When I met him, he was probably in his 80s. I want to say earlier 80s, but sat and talked to him a lot the next 2 or 3 years that he was there and tried to get some information from him, and what he shared was very interesting was, here's a big Kaju Danzan connection. The Kaimoki YMCA, which is where he taught, which is also where that group that was Joe Imperato, Tony Ramos Gaylord, Hackelman's teacher, right? Those guys all came. Yeah, they all came out of that gym. Well, there was a time where they were alternating days. So the jiu-jitsu guys would put on a white belt and go train Kaju, and the Kaju guys would put on a white belt and go train jiu-jitsu. So since my Kaju lineage comes from Joe Imperato to Paulie Saronio to Gaylord, right? That jiu-jitsu was still there because they were going that. So to me, Gaylord's always loved the jiu-jitsu part of what we did. He didn't do a lot of it, but he always loved it. In fact, he got us hooked up with the Gracies and also like 90, 91. Hickson, he brought Hickson in and we did several seminars with Hickson. This is how long ago. It was $50 for the weekend, was how long that was, right? And that's where Tom Theophanopoulos went to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and a lot of us and John Bono started doing the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu also, because Rickson tapped out everybody in the room. He rolled with everybody in the room, and let me tell you, that was quite an experience, getting tapped out by Rickson Gracie and watching everybody, no matter how bad they thought they were, gone in 60 seconds, right? You know, so it lit a fire under us a little bit. You know, I went toward the Danzan-Ryu side. Some other people went toward the BJJ side. I eventually rolled my way around because I was affiliated with a guy out of Fremont named Darlinson Lira, who to me is just one of the greatest, just a great jiu-jitsu player, person, very traditional jiu-jitsu. They do gi no gi, but they're very traditional in what they do, and I love it. I love the way they start and end class traditionally. They're you know, just great. So I ended up having a BJJ program along with the Danzan-Ryu program at my gym. Got to give the best to our kids, right? We got to give our kids the best. And if we can't do it, this was Gaylord's philosophy. If I can't do it, I'm going to bring somebody else in who can, and then we can all share and mix. And here we are, Danzan-Ryu, Kajukenbo, BJJ, you know, and whatever else, you know, Eskrima, whatever else we do, right?
So if I heard your story correctly, you got tapped out by Rickson Gracie. Is that, did I catch that? Did I hear that?
We all did. Everybody.
It was like everybody.
Well, they all did. I think I might have been on the
Oprah style. Everybody gets there.
No. I think I was in the old guy crowd. I was already super old. So I think I got the old man pass on that one. Yeah.
All right. And again, for anybody listening, I am not talking shit about BJJ. Okay. I look at things objectively, just like I said earlier about how I feel that a lot of the Kajukenbo is missing that ground element. A lot of the ground element, I told you earlier, I'm just trying to be objective about how I see it and how I approach it. I've always seen Kajukenbo as just that acronym, and that's what I follow. Now, if you can follow it historically, that's great. Me personally, I see it as a mindset and how I train my students. So like, I want them, I was just telling this to Anthony Mealy. I was telling him, like, I want my student to be able to walk into a karate place and not look like a noob. I want my student to be able to walk into a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu place and not look like a noob. Like, not they might not be the best in the room, but the person can already tell that they've had some experience. I want them to be able to walk into a Kung Fu studio, even if Kung Fu isn't their thing. If Kung Fu is their thing, I want them to walk in there and I want the Kung Fu people to say, hey, this person knows something. And same with the bow for the kickboxing and boxing. And at that point, I really don't care where, whether it was Shotokan or whether it was I don't know, Kyokushin. I'm not a very big nerd. I should be. I run a podcast. I'm not a big nerd when it comes to the sub styles in there. I am interested in it, but my memory, maybe I've been punched in the head too many times. My memory just can't remember it. So,
I'm way there. Hey, remember, I'm 68. I'm way there with you. Some things are sharp and some things are, you know, not so much.
Yeah.
Just wait. Wait. How old are you again?
I'm only 40 and I'm already forgetting.
Oh man, you're the baby.
I'm in
Wait another 20,
trouble.
28 years.
I'm in a lot of trouble. I'm glad. Partially, this podcast is for me to remember because I'm recording it and I can listen to it later.
Old man advice: pace yourself, because from here it gets rough as a kaiju guy. As much as we beat up our bodies,
Yeah.
And I'm still more active than a lot of 68-year-olds that I know, but I hurt every day because of it. You know.
I'm definitely taking a step back. I stopped competing a few years back in full contact fighting. That's those days.
Well, you know, some people are smart, some not so much. The last time I fought I was 61. So it was just point fighting, so it was no big deal.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's still fun, but
I don't know. I'm going back and forth on it. I may do what they call the master's class, the old man division. I'm thinking of doing the old man division for gi jiu-jitsu.
Well, do it soon, because here's what I'm going to tell you. The last 2 times I competed, right? Not too far apart. One, I tore a hammy so bad, my hammy is still bad. And the other one is on that, I fighting for grand, which I did win, by the way. I tore my supraspinatus on this side. And I've been living with that torn supraspinatus since. So just old man advice. You're still in your 40s. Just do it now, quick, get it out of your system before you hurt yourself forever. I know you didn't want to hear that, but
I might just not do it. that's I'm already thinking that. Like, the last time I competed was the catch wrestling match that I thought it was no gi, and I realized last year when one of my guys asked me, said they wanted to do no gi, I sent them the flyer, and the guy was like, "This isn't no gi." I'm like, "Yeah, it is. It's rash guard grappling." It's like, this says, it's Japanese. It's like, this says catch wrestling. These are catch wrestling rules. This is like, I just want to do something easier than this. And I'm like, oh shit. Cause like, I did a catch wrestle. I retired on a catch wrestling.
Well, if you do it, take this advice, stretch more than you think you need to.
So the point is, I tore my LCL, and I still feel my LCL is not that great. So I don't know. Either way. We've definitely diverted way.
Tell your wife I said you're welcome for talking you out of it.
Well, is there anything you wanted to add before we wrap things up? Anything we missed about Danzan? Because this is
a lot of stuff you missed, and I'm hoping to have a real Danzan guy with you here. I hope I did. I hope I did it justice, because I know I toward Kajukenbo, but hey, I'm Kajukenbo. It's always going to go that way. But like I tried to get you in touch. There was 2 people specifically, and I tried more than 2 to get them on here with us tonight.
Again, the point of the podcast wasn't to go into. I mean, as much as I love talking to people who are nerded out on their art, and they know all the dates and they know all the stories and great masters and all this stuff, and they link it all together and they make this like clear path from the past to now. I mostly wanted a more conceptual idea of what it was, because it's there, and I don't know how many students before I was like, hey, this is we do jujitsu. It's from this. I'd say Danzan-Ryu. I had no idea what the fuck I was saying. I was just saying, oh yeah, it's Danzan-Ryu Jujitsu. And at the end of the day, it was whatever I learned grappling. And then I was teaching him that. So like, I am glad that I can at least conceptualize that Danzan-Ryu Jiujitsu sounds like a lot of stand up, a lot of takedown. Sounds very similar to judo with a lot of joint locks. So now I actually have an idea, because I had no idea. I was just telling people that, but I didn't know what the fuck it was.
What separates it is, this is a local boy thing. This is a Hawaii thing. It's got that Kajukenbo mentality. It's got that Kajukenbo. That's what I love about it. There's not that much sport to it. They're gonna slam you to the ground, break something, and walk away. To me,
if that's the case,
Danzan-Ryu is Kajukenbo.
Yeah, if that's the case, then I mean, even though I didn't know what it was because I never did it, the same thing, right? Like, my instructor did some judo, and every single Kajukenbo school has that standing armbar, and people were like, "What's a standing armbar? How are you gonna submit someone when you're standing?" I'm like, "Well, it's not really a submission." I'm like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, you just break their arm. I'm not gonna wait for you to tap. Like, I'm gonna break your arm, and now you can't punch with that arm." So like, if that's what Danzan-Ryu is doing, then there's the Danzan-Ryu Jujitsu.
And that's after you knee him in the groin to make that arm break easier.
Yeah. We were taught break their arm, then punch them in the face and stomp on them after you've broken their arm. and that's why, and that's the Kajukenbo part. And if that's what Danzan-Ryu Jiujitsu is doing, then it sounds like they're Ohana, and that's cool.
The group I'm with, that's the way they do it. So I can only speak for what I know and the people that I train with. And I've trained with other people from outside too, but that group for sure does it that way.
And it's funny that they say, oh, and then okay, so now I know some BJJ guys are probably no submissions is not jiu-jitsu. So, but like here's the deal though. It's funny that we say stuff like a knee, a drop knee to the head. You know how they have in Kajukenbo, we have the knee to the head, control by knee to the head, and in BJJ they have the knee to the belly, which I feel is the nicer version of shit. When I went into the place, funny story, when I went into the place that I train at, I was training with a black belt, and I went for the knee to the belly, and he started to transition to try to get out of it. And the second I saw that, I immediately did a knee to the head. And I did it within the rules. I didn't drop my knee on his head. I just went from transition from knee to the belly to putting pressure on the head to dropping my knee on his head. And that set up my submission to tap him out. I'm not a black belt in BJJ, and I'm not trying to be like, ooh, whatever. But that's just what happened. And what I realized was that they never taught me that. In fact, after I was done, the head coach walked up to me and said, that was really cool what you did there. Please don't do that on the students.
Of course.
Please do that brown belt and above. Don't do that, because at the time I was still I've held on to a white belt for like 6 years in that style. So like I was still a white belt. He said, just don't do that with like your sparring partners or the blue belts. You can do that stuff with the brown belts and above, but don't do that with them below, and you can do that in competition, but don't do it every day, please, because someone's gonna get hurt. And again, I didn't and I'm always asking him stuff. So like, okay, so we don't allow an elbow, but I can place my elbow. Like if I slowly place my, like I'm not gonna elbow him, but I'm just gonna put my elbow on his jaw. Can we do that? And he's like, yes, you could do that. Just don't move so quickly when you do it. Because then I'd come in with the elbow and I'd slow it down last minute to the kid. And he's like, God bless my teacher for all the subby small heart attacks he would have watching me roll with people, scared that I was going to Kajukenbo them in the middle of the BJJ class.
That's what people don't get, is our mindset is just, it's set. The mindset is set no matter how long we train, right?
Yeah, that's like, even my friend that I sent to do BJJ, he finally visits me after a year of me being there. He finally comes out to an eye area, and he's like, a lot of the moves you do are just like, I know you're my friend, but they're asshole moves. And I'm like, look, I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm just trying to submit you. I'm just trying to get out of your close guard. He's like, but did you have to cram your knee into my leg? Like you dug your elbow into my leg still hurts. And I'm like, it's a quicker way. It's faster. I don't want to sit there.
You're lucky I didn't elbow you and then do that.
I did what the instructor said. I didn't do this. He said, do it. If I go gently, I can do this stuff if I don't come at you hard. So yeah, Kajukenbo, the asshole art. So
Kajukenbo.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you very much, Ron Esteller, for coming out and sharing what is officially, he knows everything there is to know about Danzan-Ryu Jujitsu, the expert in the field.
Well, that was fun as always. I can't wait to talk to you about Hawkheim someday.
Yeah, and then if you're a Danzan-Ryu Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, you heard this and you want to kill me,
or me,
or Ron, don't just send me a message. We'll have you on the show. You can tell me all about the history.
Or come on by and see me.
Yeah, that's yeah. We'll show you some Kajukenbo. Oh, now we're starting. Oh, yeah. Let's end the podcast with a challenge to all the Danzan-Ryu Jiu-Jitsu guys. We did a great job there. You don't like it, I'll fight you. Either way.
Hey, it's only 7 years and 61. I still got some in me.
Hey, we love you guys. You're our Ohana. That's what we definitely want to say that. And,
I have my Danzan-Ryu Hana, which I love dearly, all of them, just as much. And sometimes, I'm not going to say more than my Kajukenbo Hana, but a little less drama. And I love these guys with my heart. That's why I wanted to be here. If you couldn't find somebody, I was trying to find you somebody. I hope I did it justice. So
at least now I know. At least for me and for anybody coming from a Kajukenbo background, at least now we have a conceptual idea of what it is. And for that, thank you so much. For my listeners, I'll catch you all later. I said it earlier, if you like what you heard, if this is your first episode, hit subscribe. I'm always talking about martial arts. Specifically, I talk a lot about Kajukenbo because it's what I teach. And it's coming from a psychological perspective. I'll catch you all later. Peace.
Peace.